Cool. I hope people aren't overwhelmed from all of the events that happened yesterday for International Women's Day. Obviously, we think International Women's Day should be every day. Before we jump into today, I just want to introduce myself. So I'm Lucy. I'm the founder of the Humblebrag, a communications consultancy and changemaker academy committed to driving business as a force for good, and initiator of Creators for Climate, which is a global network and community driving action on the climate emergency. So today with Womxn, from the Next Woman, we wanted to shine a light on three brave leaders who are each raising their voice to challenge the status quo. And we wanted to invite our community to be a part of this conversation and share their stories too. And these three leaders are not simply rising to the ranks of men, they are each carving their own independent path as change makers. And they're all very interesting because they offer unique perspectives and worldviews as solution holders, driving forward change across a range of social impact businesses. So today's also a celebration of women as solution holders to the world's problems. A little bit of housekeeping. So please mute yourself while the speakers are talking and drop your questions in the chat so we can pull them out. And we also want you to network and to connect with each other. So the chat is there for you to introduce yourself. I'll be there kicking that off if that's too awkward for you to do a little humble brag yourself. Drop in your social handles, make sure that you connect. This time and space is yours. And the second half of the event will be turning to you to share your voice and views with us, so stay tuned. And Rex, before we introduce our speakers, I know that this is the first year the Next Woman has held an event on International Women's Day, so maybe you want to talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course, and not even on International Women's Days, because we're a day late.
That's true.
But going into, and we had the conversation just with the kickoff of speakers as well. Every day should be International Women's Day, not just that one day a year. So that's always our statement on March 8th. But really, the theme this year, the Choose to Challenge, spoke to me on a personal level. Had the activation that's part of this year's theme. The active choice you have to make to be a challenger and to not go along with the status quo really spoke to me on such a level that I'm really happy to be here and that we organized this event together, Lucy.
Fantastic. Rex, I'll let you continue to let people in. They're flooding in, only 3 minutes past 9. So introducing our speakers today, we have Precious Clark, who is the founder of Maurea Consulting and designer of the highly acclaimed Te Ka training program, which has one mission: to help 10,000 people positively identify with Māori culture. Precious is a tribal leader, an experienced board governor, a wife and mum of 2 children who she raises speaking their native language, Te Reo Māori. And we have Daphne Laan, who's co-founder of the Board Whisperers. She's on a mission to encourage executive teams to foster diversity of thought in their organizations, offering a creative solution to the urgent need for a more balanced representation at the top level of organizations. And she's also managing director of social impact enterprise and catalyst for change Down to Earth Collective. And we have Tessa Wernink, the creator and host of the podcast series, What If We Get It Right? She is part of the founding team of Fairphone, a social enterprise using the production of smartphones to drive systemic change. And she's also co-director of Tada, an Amsterdam-based movement for a responsible digital future. And today, she's most of the time a business coach, creative facilitator, speaker, and mother of 3. So our first question to our panelists is, what does the theme Choose to Challenge mean to you? And I will invite Daphne to kick us off.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and good evening for those in New Zealand. For me, if I'm truly honest, I shifted from the question in my head, and that was, who am I to voice my opinion, to what does it actually mean if I don't? Because I have I grew up in quite a privileged background and did a lot of studies, worked at Google, spent time abroad, you name it. And, the list of what I did was quite large, but I still found myself thinking, okay, but there are so many others who can, bring stuff to the table. But then I thought, okay, but what does it mean if I even don't dare to speak up? And when I shifted my perspective around that, then I thought, okay, that option to me is even less attractive. So I thought, okay, you know, I'm going to step through the fear of voicing my opinion, and I find it now important to be a role model in a sense also for my own daughter and for young women who maybe are not as privileged or don't have had the chances I had, so that people feel their voice is represented, because I think we still live at a time where a lot of voices are not represented at tables that are where decisions are being made. So for me, it's a combination of, it actually became my personal mission to challenge the status quo. And yeah, my husband always sort of funnily says, okay, but you know, it's not about just voicing something I see as an opportunity to improve. It's also about seeing what is best for everybody. So how can we improve moving to a better place for all? So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Daphne. Precious, I'd love to invite you to share your response. What does it mean to choose to challenge for you?
Tēnā rā koutou I a kumare kura e whakarauika mai ki tēnei huihuinga o ngā wahine Māori, wahine o te motu o te ao, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Lucy. I guess choose to challenge, first and foremost, it's about an intention. And it's a purposeful intention. So for me, choosing to challenge has to be connected to me understanding my purpose, and that challenge needs to be aligned to that, because what's at stake is a lot. What's at stake is that you need to stand by your conviction and your challenge. You need to be held acceptable for it. You have to potentially be comfortable with being ridiculed for it. You might have awkward moments with your families as a result of it. You might lose friends as a result of it. So that challenge and that intention behind it is really important. In our culture, we have this concept called Mauri. And Mauri is your life force. So all living things, animate and inanimate, rocks, birds, air, ocean, people, we all have Mauri. And so when choosing to challenge protecting your Mauri, your life essence becomes really important. And as I've gotten older, being very purposeful about where I invest my energy to challenge has become a higher priority, especially as I'm a mum and, like everyone else here, I imagine, overworked. So yeah, it's intentional and it's purpose aligned.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Precious. And Tessa.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see so many of you, some familiar faces. It was a really nice opportunity to think about this, because I think it's such a natural part of what I do to choose to challenge. And what it comes down to for me is to not get stuck in a single way of viewing the world, so challenging dominant views of the world. And I think for me it was something that I identify with Precious a lot. It comes from what is my purpose and what are my values. And I grew up in Hong Kong, so I moved to the Netherlands when I was 10, and I think I always thought that my bicultural kind of upbringing was not feeling at home anywhere. And then I realized that actually it was quite a gift to be able to see things from different perspectives. And so for me, it's become something that I use in my work. Like, what are the things that I value? Doesn't mean that that's what other people value, but it is good to speak, to say these out loud and to be able to connect in these ways. But for me, choosing to challenge from a work perspective has been in business, where I feel that purpose and values are becoming more relevant in business, but they haven't been that way at all. So how can we make businesses more humane, more driven from the heart, so where people can actually stick to what they believe in, so that we can actually challenge that system and the way it's being run at the moment. That was for me.
Thank you. So if anybody's got any questions, please drop them in the chat. But for now, we had a little kind of pre-discussion about this topic, choose to challenge, and what it meant to all of us. And I love organizing events like this and bringing women together, particularly because I find it quite energizing and a safe space and a supportive space. So one of the questions that I had to the panelists was, how do you protect your energy and not get burnt out by being the challenger? So I will just invite any one of you, including Rix, to respond to that before we move on to the next question.
I think it really taps also into what Tessa is now working on, a book she's writing about how to not burn out while being an activist and always hearing no. I think for me yesterday, I was in a panel at the RVO, the Dutch enterprise organization from the government. And I was talking to founders from the MENA region, so women who are living in Libya, Lebanon, Yemen, Palestine, Egypt, and I felt very fortunate again, because yeah, the struggle is real here in the Netherlands, but it's a lot safer most of the time than it is in other countries. But even here, always having to explain the fact that this is still a topic, and I think one of the main questions on International Women's Day is this still necessary? Love to hear our panelists' thoughts on that. Maybe Tessa, since it's your book.
Is it still necessary to fight this fight? Yeah, the book, thank you, Rick. So I'm working on a project called the Undercover Activist, and the ideas around positive workplace activism. From the perspective, I think that a lot of people enter organizations with this amazing energy and enthusiasm and really want to change stuff, and then they kind of hit a wall, usually of like, how can I fulfill my purpose, and maybe just the kind of daily running of an organization that isn't kind of based on that. I think so I've been doing a lot of research about what activism is, and a lot of activism is based in an idealist frame of mind, and is very close to the things that you find important. And some of the things that we do is that we externalize the fight. So I think a lot of it is like, what are the things that are important to me, and how can I look in myself and figure out what is important to me, and to see that as a quest that you have, that you're going to be doing anyway, and then how do you relate that to the outside world? And I think for me, what has helped me maybe to make it more practical is to be able to zoom out at points where I think, okay, so I'm so in this system, and I'm one of the cogs or the parts in the system, and maybe I'm going to hit a brick wall, or maybe I'm going to hit with misunderstanding, and maybe that's good for me to understand what drives me, but also to see like, okay, so what drives everybody else, you know? So we're all in this together, and if I can't see the bigger picture, then I'm just going to get really tired of fighting that little fight. So maybe to sit back, listen, understand, and then go back in.
Yeah, and I like to add to that, because I recognize if you look at the question, okay, how do you maintain and safeguard your own energy? I found out that sort of walking within the boundaries of the accepted, in a way, cost me much more energy than just, standing up for what I believe in, am truly passionate about, and I love. So I made a decision when I was at Google, and it was, one of these days where I thought, okay, I've been working as one of the guys for such a long time, and I really loved the things I did, but I also thought, okay, there's something I don't bring to the table, and maybe I should do that, and other women with me. And then I took on the experiment and thought, okay, I'm going to do it. And from that moment on, I found if you truly follow your heart in that sense, and it is as easy as feeling where, what makes you happy, then a lot of doors will open that you cannot imagine yourself. And in that way, things also approach you where you get energy from. So for me, that is, I think, my pole stick, or my sense in that sense, is to always step into, okay, what makes me happy? And if it makes me happy and it aligns with my values, as Tessa said, yeah, then most of the times it gives me energy.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
If I may add to that, if you are a exceptional woman, like I imagine everyone here is, then burnout is only a fingernail away, really. And so accepting that it's forever present and it's really close to you becomes really important. I was born into a land occupation, so I was conceived during my family's protest in a land occupation of our tribal lands here in New Zealand and Auckland. And so I was honoured to be moved into this kind of activism space, born into it, so to speak. And it was as a result of land issues with our government. And my uncle who led it, he was the 6th generation since my 7 times great-grandfather who signed the Treaty of Waitangi, which was an agreement between the Indigenous people here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the settler government. Every single generation is involved in this kind of discourse since 7 generations ago. And so the sense of legacy becomes really important for me in how I hold myself. The way I see myself is that I am suspended in time, the past and the future, and I have legacy obligations to my ancestors and legacy obligations to my descendants that aren't born yet. And this kind of holds me up so that I can suspend myself in time and take a step back and look at myself and go, well, I'm only here for a finite period and I've got to do the best I can, but how can I draw on the energy of my ancestors, draw on the energy of my descendants that are yet to come to propel me and keep me moving? That said, I wouldn't say I'm the greatest person on the planet and with balance. I'd say that my husband is really good at keeping me in check. So having people around me to support me to say, you need a break. You need to go away. We need to go away. Let's get your sister to look after the kids for the weekend and just have time out. Having that network around your supporters when you're a magnificent woman is really important to maintain energy for purposeful work.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Precious. I wanted to highlight also that, you know, it is so great having you here on the panel. I think that part of profiling and celebrating women as solution holders is also bringing forth, you know, it's so great to have an Indigenous perspective, and you have spoken to us about that before, as that being your superpower. So that's awesome. I wanted to turn it over to the audience. Rex, have any questions come up? Sorry, I haven't been scanning that while I...
No, mostly introduction so far, and everyone looking to connect with each other. So I think we can really take it to our next question. And that's basically coming into this fact that we talked about the energy that it takes to be a challenger, but what does it really mean for our panel to be a challenger? When was that? Is that a conscious decision that you've made to not go along with the status quo and to fight it, or is it something that organically came to be?
And also in our pre-discussion, a tension, and I think a really healthy tension that came up was, how do you create meaningful change? Are you the challenger, or are you the, I don't know the term you used, Tessa, but it was like the secret or unsuspecting activist. Are you the kind of person that's going to have a seat at the table and, you know, play the game at times to move for change, or are you kind of standing there on the outside? So I'd love to hear some responses on that too.
Yeah, I would love to tap into that, because I see myself basically as a connector. So even though I'm challenging the status quo, I also do it with connection to whoever is at the table, because I feel I walk in different worlds. I've been a long time part of the corporate world, as we often say, if you step out of the corporate world and become your independent and found your own business. But I feel still connected and part of that world. I mean, there's the people that are really more on the activist space and standing up for something which is equally important, but I don't feel like I want to be the one that sort of stands somewhere not in connection with others. So what I tend to do is I'm always deadly honest and transparent, and I try to, you know, bring out what's under the carpet. But I do it from a sense of that we're on the same boat, rather than putting yourself outside of the picture. And I think then it's also you're getting accepted, I think, at different tables and also in different cultures, because obviously as Dutch, we are raised to be more direct. And if I compared it when I was about 20, which is already a long time ago, I went to Indonesia and I worked for in the creative space there. But there it's much less accepted to directly, voice your opinion. But even then, if you take into account a little bit of what's going on and, you know, what drives others around the table, then you can come a far way with being honest.
And I guess to add to that, being a challenger is not just for the sake of being a challenger, because as we've already heard from all of us, there's a lot of energy and emotion that is attached to that type of work. So again, for me, it ties back to, you know, what is your purpose, and where I will position myself really is dependent on where I see my skill sets within the context of that particular kaupapa, or that particular challenge, for want of a better term to describe it. So sometimes I might be at the table and I might be helping people understand a different perspective alongside the decision makers. Other times I might be the person initiating court action. I'm currently in court against the Crown on behalf of my tribe. So it really depends. There isn't one shape, form or mold where you might position yourself. It's really about the skill sets that you have to offer for the higher purpose. But as I get older, I realize that if I'm going to step into a position to challenge, I receive more and grow more and enjoy it more if I'm doing it in a space of aroha. So for us, aroha is this concept of focusing your life breath towards something. It's described as love, but it's a lot more meaningful than that. It's giving every iota, every essence, every part of yourself towards something. So if you're going to do that, it's not for the sake of it anymore. When I was in my 20s, it was. But in my 40s, I'm a little bit more selective.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I also recognize it, because I think on the other side of challenging, for me, how I say it is what I am and what I do is I bring freedom in thinking and doing. So it's not so much about being against something or challenging something without a solution, but it's about what I do with what we call now challenging the status quo. Is basically I bring freedom in thinking and doing for others to follow their own path and then connect to the purpose Precious is talking about. Yeah, so it almost feels like it is me. It's not sort of something I consciously now do. It's just who I am, and I just bring who I am to the outside world.
Yeah, I think it is. So listening to this, yeah, it's really nice. I think for me, it's also we have this idea. I think about a leader and a challenger has to be the person who's rises up above everybody else, or who leads, or is like this Messiah-esque figure. And I think I was challenged by that when my eldest son, his teacher said, "Oh, he's such a leader in the class," and I thought, oh, he probably stood up and told everybody what to do or something. He said, no, that wasn't it. They had to make a decision, and nobody was able to make a decision. And then at some point, you know, I called them, and my son apparently said, you know, shall I come and pick you up? The teacher had said, and my son had said, well, you know, if it's not too much trouble because you have a bad leg, I think we should be, you know, fetched by the teacher because nobody can go. She said, no, it's about the empathy, that you can understand what everybody needs in that space, and at that point to make a decision when nobody else dared to make a decision. And for me, it was such a insight that I thought my idea of a challenger or a leader is somebody who's always like leading from the front, whereas actually, how can I make that space big enough for other people to fit in, and how can I, as a woman, maybe use my other skills like empathy to get other people at the table. So I think that for me is like, what is a challenger?
Thank you. There's such beautiful sharing going on in the chat, and we have got some amazing people here. So we wanted to invite everybody to share their story, and we're going to break out into little groups. So myself, Rixt, Precious, Tessa and Daphne will be in those groups too, and Rixt is actually curating the groups as we speak, matching and looking at our profiles. So let's see where we land. And the two questions that should guide our conversation is, what does the theme choose to challenge mean to you? And what tips would you give others embracing bravery in 2021? And if you're the kind of person that just does not want to speak, absolutely fine. Just say, I'm here to listen. And Rixt, I will let you kind of take it away with your magic finger.
Yes, there we'll go. And Lucy, how much time do we have for the session? 10 minutes before
10
we
minutes,
get back?
yeah, and then we'll come back and we can continue having a discussion together.
Welcome back. So those were a quick 10 minutes, I can assume, with 5 to 6 people and this topic to discuss. Precious, what was discussed in your conversation?
Well, I had a magnificent group of women, and we discovered that we're all business owners. So we all left the perceived security blanket of corporate life to take a step out on a limb and hang on the edge of a tree by our fingernails and have belief in ourselves. And so what we discussed was the importance of having trust in yourself and in your vision and in your ability, and that the world will collude to bring goodness to you. We talked about being our own machines instead of being cogs in someone else's. The importance of looking after yourself and all of that, and that we can live with less to achieve those things. You know, if the fear is walking away from security of a well-paying job, we can live with less to fulfill our own goals and our own visions.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing. Tessa, how about you?
Hi, we had a very small room, actually just 3 of us in the end, and we talked a lot about, I guess, entrepreneurship, founding a company, being what Lucy called an impatient entrepreneur, and Iris talked about this moment being about rethinking how she is also seen in the company with 3 other male co-founders. I think going it step by step was one of the outcomes. Like, how can we not look in the distance and see where all the places that we want to be, but like to be where we are right now, and to take that one step. We talked about anyway, for me, like being heard when you're in a group of other fellow entrepreneurs who in this case were male, and how that it's harder to be heard if you put in the emotion sometimes and less in an observation, and but that's also something that we're so worried about, that we're seen as emotional, whereas actually I think just embodying that and just leaving it in the other person's responsibility to hear you rather than over making that extra effort is good to try. That was it for now, and maybe Lucy, you want to supplement some of this? No? Okay.
No, that was perfect. I think our observation about being sometimes you can, as a woman, being hypersensitive to your own emotion, whereas maybe men would be perceived in that moment as being passionate. So how can you, in 2021, own that passion, and, you know, maybe just flick your hair and walk away and not worry about what people think.
Great tip, great tip. I think for the last group, maybe not one of our panelists, but Adjo, what was discussed in your group?
We introduced ourselves, and Ezra shared something I found very interesting, as in she shared that that for people in privilege, the word equality feels like a threat, and I found it very interesting because you don't want to feel it like a threat. How can you, get closer to one another without the other one going in defensive mode? And then the 10 minutes were actually already gone, so it was, you were just hungry for more.
Cool, great to hear, great to hear. I think we'll do one more question here and then have a final breakout to give you an additional 10 minutes with some new people as well. I think what the question would be, and what I like the input from the panelists on first, is what's your current biggest challenge? What are you, if we're choosing to challenge, what's your challenge at the moment?
And I think we can just kind of let people unmic themselves. There might be a little bit of overlap. It's always a bit awkward, but it's nice to open it up to whoever wants to share.
The challenge that I've committed myself to, and I have been for the last 5 years, is the big ugly issue of race relations in New Zealand, where I belong to the Indigenous group, the Māori people here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we feature in all of the poorest statistics. And that's not entirely without fault from a racist institutional system. And so my way of approaching that is I deliver training to help open people's hearts, their minds, and so their aspects, and so they can identify with my culture in a way that it resonates in their stomachs. And then it drives new behavior and new acceptance and new tolerance. And I've been doing that for 5 years, and I love it. I really enjoy it. And I love the transformation that I see people go through who might have described themselves as ignorant in their own words, sometimes racist, to have a real shift. And I do that because I raise my children Māori. I raise them speaking their native language. They have Māori names, so most people mispronounce them. Their names are Taiaria and Rongomai. And my daughter is a beautiful caramel brown little girl, and she will have a different trajectory to me. I was raised with the English name, with white skin, green eyes, light hair, and a law degree. And so doors open for somebody like me really quickly and really easily. And she won't have the same opportunity just because she's brown with a Māori name. And so I figured I had about 15 years to change things up so that my kids are able to leverage their Māori culture and contribute to a global society with deep traditional knowledge rather than be inhibited because of it. So that's my challenge.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah, I feel sort of the impact you're making is much closer and so important to do. So I just want to say beautiful. If I look at what I sort of see as my focus sense, I think one of the topics that we didn't really address yet is sort of leading with feminine and masculine qualities. So what I love to sort of spend my time on, about 100% now, is sort of to challenge that how we look at leadership. And that feminine qualities also men can bring to the table just as much. That I am very result driven. The reason I'm, I was quite successful in the corporate world is that I can come along quite well with that space. But I think the time has come to be really, question ourselves, everybody. What does it mean to bring yourself to the table? If you really look at your feminine qualities, your masculine qualities, and that's why I was also touched by what Precious says. What is the voice of the future? So how do you bring the voice of the children to the table that are not, represented at a lot of tables and cannot speak? And and that's sort of what I always take along in the back of my head, and also challenge everybody about, or try to invite people to bring their feminine qualities to the table.
My turn.
Yes.
So many beautiful challenges. I think it's a bit of both. I think on the one hand, it's just this kind of existential challenge of climate change coming speeding toward us, and just how are we going to, as a society, come together to understand the threat and pull together. And for me, I think it's the role of business and showing that there is a lot of positivity. There's a lot of things going out there that we can join, rather than that we feel numbed by and then we just don't know how to act. So I think that on the macro scale of like, how can we tell stories, how can we inspire people, how can we show our humanity, and how we can come together in this thing that threatens us, and make this corona lockdown an opportunity rather than a and I think on the other hand, it's something I read in the Think newsletter. Maurea, you're here as well. It's like, start where you stand. So how do you channel the energy to the space that you're in, which I thought was really beautiful. And I think that the past year for me has been that, like, okay, I can like put it out there, and like the world's going to ruins, but how about my family and the energy that it takes to give them the attention that they need. So I think that balance is always a challenge. Yeah.
And it's so great having mentors and friends like you, Tessa, because I am, well, if I stood up, you'd see that I was 5 weeks away from my due date, giving birth. So my challenge in 2021 will be taking some time off work. I'd love to open the floor up to others and invite you to share with us your challenge for 2021 as we close. So the floor is up for anyone who wants to dive in. But I can see Marika there, who I can probably pick on to start.
Okay, my challenge, yeah, make a success of this fledgling venture that I have. So, but a success, I think, is a very wide-ranging word. It could just be being happy with every day, then I'd be fine. It doesn't have to be like, woo, like stratospheric success. I gave up on that idea a really long time ago. So yeah, and to I think actually to take joy in every day. I like Tessa, you know, making something of the fact that I live in my house now is like a really interesting thing. I love being in this house, and so now I used to leave it for long periods of time, and now I'm like, well, why did we do that? So, yeah, enjoy your bubble, Lucy. You're going to be in your house a lot, but it's going to be wonderful. Thank you for this. It was great.
Great, thanks for sharing, Marika. I'm just gonna point out people because we have around 12 minutes left and we have around 30 people still left in the call, and I would love to hear as much input as we can. So maybe Iris from Renew.
Yeah, so my biggest challenge for next year, it will be to, really find a little bit like, so I'm also a company owner. We are a 1-year startup, and we just received our first funding. So for now, for me as the CEO of the company, it would be to really like find ways to stir it in the right direction and take it to the next step. So that's really my goal and my challenge for 2021, which is it's a huge one. But yeah, again, when you're doing something passionate, what I read out about today's meeting here is that everyone seems very passionate and also talented on the things that they're doing. Marika, I really love your actually website. I just checked it out. And so I think when you're passionate about things, it's of course you always have challenges, but it's great to be working towards a big goal, and as long as I have that, I'm happy.
I think some of us are being disruptive enough just by growing and taking care of us, and others will go and be the activists at the front line fighting issues like climate change. Isra and
raised hands.
Yeah, exactly. I saw some raised hands, so maybe we can go that way. Isra and Musari.
I think Musari was first, but I don't know if she's still here.
Go ahead, Ezra. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I think my challenge for this year has just become obvious in the days yesterday and today due to International Women's Day, where I felt like, you know what, I think I really need to do more networking outside of my business, because I work in an international engineering firm, which is very male heavy. And I feel like I need to kind of push a reset button for myself to see where I see my path going, and maybe discussing it with a lot of people and seeing what routes other people take and what inspires them and where they go will help me with that. It's a little challenging with COVID currently, but I'm thinking maybe I should see, after having lived abroad for a few years, if I can build a bit of a network somehow in lockdown in Amsterdam. So I think that's what I may have to try.
Awesome. Well, the next woman is a good place to start. Musari.
Thanks so much. So for me, it's the challenge that is as much to myself as it is to basically every woman here and on the globe, which is, you know, to put ourselves first. I think that it was Elizabeth Gilbert who talked really beautifully about how we as women always sort of take on the responsibility of taking care of everyone around us. And even though I'm single and, solopreneur, I find that during lockdown, I realized how much I don't even know what it is that I want, because it's so often defined by what other people maybe expect or hope from me. And I so subtly absorb that and respond to that. And so for me, the challenge is to put myself first, and to trust that in doing so, if anyone joins me in this challenge, is to actually give the world the permission to relax, to give everyone the permission to be who they are, and not constantly push and drive and strive and achieve and I also really believe that is the climate challenge, is that we're just constantly overproducing and overconsuming. And I'm a big believer that environmental health is actually a projection of our mental health problems, that we're kind of externalizing our internal inadequate feelings. And so how can we put ourselves first, let ourselves enjoy our being alive, and not feeling the need to prove our rights to exist, to live, to enjoy the gift of life. That's my challenge, and I would love if
rest is a radical act, right? And without going too philosophical, sometimes it's interesting to observe how much you internalize the capitalist discourse of productivity. So I am with you there.
Great to hear, Lucy. Well, and hopefully being a mom will give you some time to really take on this challenge.
I can see Katie, my lovely intern. I'm going to invite you to speak next to take the spotlight off that.
Hi, thanks, Lucy. So I feel like a lot of people here own their own business, or are starting their own business. And as Lucy said, I'm an intern. So I'm actually at the start of my journey. But I do hope to one day be where a lot of you are. I think that challenges for me are both small and larger scale. So small scale is within families and friends. There's always a challenge there because some people haven't had the opportunity to be surrounded by a strong mentor or a network of really strong women. And so the challenge for me is to try and invite more people that I think would really benefit from these communities to sort of start their journey on it, as well as the thing is, I've now worked for Lucy, who's such an incredible leader, and she's got such a powerful voice. I'm not sure if I can go back to working for a man, or working for somebody that doesn't empower women or empower people that don't have diversity or inclusivity, and doesn't do things to help the environment, and doesn't just think that global warming's a myth. Like, it's going to be difficult to then place myself in a company in the future that doesn't hold the same beliefs and mission and vision that that I'm now on. So yeah. Thanks, Lucy.
I really hope that your career and that many jobs will actually accelerate within the social impact space and business as a force for good. So hopefully more and more people, especially younger people, won't have to make that choice. Although I think for many of us, we have had to make that choice, and we learn lessons we didn't expect to learn along the way about how the quote unquote real world works, which is sometimes something that you don't want to be told, but in the end is actually kind of useful in terms of scaling your business. Rex, I'm going to throw it back to you to wrap this up or invite someone else to speak.
No, I think looking at the time, and maybe for once, because it's not one of my strongest suits to actually end the session on time, but take this opportunity. Oh, I do see one more raised hand, and that's from Sabrina. So maybe you can be our closing statement then.
I just wanted to quickly respond to what Katie said. because I'm also, I mean, I have a couple of years of work experience, but also kind of at the start. And I'm in the opposite role, that I'm in an environment where a lot of people don't know a lot about EDI and these topics that are discussed, and are not very woke, as how we say necessarily. But I also see it as an opportunity to then share my input in an environment where people can learn from that, rather than to be in an environment which is also very nice, but where people understand what you're talking about. And I find it very challenging to always explain and go back to the basics, let's say, and to do this sort of base work. But I also feel like there are a lot of people who then go from 0 to 1, which is also sort of a benefit. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that there are like many different ways, I guess, where you can make an impact. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it's always quite challenging, of course. And I'm very happy that there are these communities where you can exchange. Like today, I love the breakout session and got very good advice, so that was super helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, to close, I think it would be nice to hear once more from Precious, Daphne, and Tessa, who hopefully can leave us with some rousing words for 2021. And Tessa, I will be nominating you first.
Oh no. Actually, I'm not sure how to give this words, but I feel the energy in this room is really comfortable. And it's really nice to be part of this crowd. Even though I don't know you, it doesn't feel like we're trying to prove anything. So it's a really nice space, and I just wanted to thank you, Lucy and Rix, and the other guests. And I liked what Sabrina just said, which made me realize that patience is a virtue. So yeah, I guess, you know, to understand that maybe not everybody has thought of things through or in a different space, and that to just go back and be patient and listen. So I think that was my my insight. So thank you.
Yeah. I guess from my perspective, when you're challenging, pushback is a natural part of that. And the way that I see pushback is a necessary part of the process, and it gives you an opportunity to flex how you might respond to that. You might choose to move the mountain to the side, or you might choose to smash through it, or you might choose to jump over it, or you might choose to resize it. And so with that pushback, recognize that maintaining your own mode, your own life force is really important, as I've already mentioned. And I guess my parting words, and this is certainly a promise that I made to myself, is that I'm the kaitiaki, I'm the guardian of my own happiness. No one else is responsible for it. There is no external factor that is responsible for it, just me alone. And give that the highest priority, one of the highest priorities in life. So thank you everyone for sharing, and thank you Rix and Lucy for bringing us together. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa.
Yeah, I think the order is then excellent, because the word I chose for this year, 2021, and I'd like to share with you, is actually joy, and a joy of creation. So, you know, rather than approaching it from what I need to challenge, I'm sort of sinking into, you know, creating. And creating can be in every sense, whether it's in business, you find new ideas that spark, you know, joy, or whether it is that you start writing because you connect more with your inner wishes, or you start, you know, listening to things that bring you joy. So that's, I think, what I want to part with, because yeah, I'd like to wish for everybody to tap in that space of where you find some joy. And then I think also the trust that then, you know, things will come at you, and let's just, you know, see what it brings and tap into the flow that happens. So with that, it also makes it less of a challenge. So with that, I also like to thank you. Thank you everybody, like actually, gift for being here.
A gift and a permission to...
I give you joy and a balloon.
Well, thanks so much for our speakers for participating. This is just an event that we decided to put on, and everyone's volunteered their time, so I'm really appreciative and mindful of that. And we're gonna shut down this room. We'll follow up with ways to stay connected, but thank you everybody for participating. This has been more than I could have hoped it would be. Bye.
Bye.
Tēnā koe.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you for
everyone.
organizing and speaking. Bye.
Good day.